There are names you hear in every history book, but behind those names lie secrets, buried under blood, betrayal, and glory. 10 heroes who changed the world, and what they hid will shock you. Their secrets rewrote history itself. Watch closely. You won't see them the same way again. And if you're ready for the truth, you know what to do.
He stood tall, but carried the weight of a broken nation. Abraham Lincoln, the rail splitter turned president, wasn't born for greatness. He carved it, one scar at a time. He led the United States through its darkest hour, not with shouts, but with silence, with letters, with aching, heavy choices. He freed the enslaved, held a country together, and every night, as the cannons roared, he sat alone, writing, not just laws, but poetry. He was haunted by war, by death, by depression so deep he called it the dark cloud. And yet, he smiled, because he believed that even in our worst moments, we can become better. The night he was shot, he was dreaming of peace. Lincoln didn't just free bodies, he freed minds. And his secret? He was never trying to be a hero. He just refused to be a coward. He was small in height, but enormous in hunger. Napoleon Bonaparte, a Corsican outsider, rose through chaos and cannon fire until Europe knelt before him. He rewrote laws, built empires, crowned himself. He didn't just conquer cities, he conquered minds. But greatness is fragile. Napoleon feared cats, obsessed over details, and in his final days was haunted by the silence of exile. He once said, "History is the version of past events that people have decided to agree upon." He tried to write his own version with blood and brilliance, but in the end, the emperor died, alone, on a poisoned island, dreaming of battles that would never come again. His secret? He wasn't driven by glory, he was running from irrelevance, and for a while, he outran it. He walked barefoot, but made empires tremble. Mahatma Gandhi, frail in frame, was steel in soul. He faced bullets with silence, chains with smiles. His weapon was truth. With nothing but a spinning wheel and resolve, he unraveled the British Empire. But peace has a price. Gandhi fasted, slept beside young women to test his virtue. Critics whispered, followers worried, and yet millions followed. He didn't want power. He wanted awakening. He was killed by one of his own. A country torn, a dream bleeding. Gandhi's secret? He believed the greatest revolution was one that changed hearts before borders. And maybe that's why he still walks with us. She was called a temptress, but ruled like a tactician. Cleopatra, last queen of Egypt, spoke 9 languages, outwitted emperors, played Rome like a chessboard. They said she seduced Caesar, then Mark Antony. But history rarely admits when a woman wins by wit. She wasn't a beauty, not by legend's standards, but her mind, sharp as a dagger. She chose death over disgrace, holding a serpent to her chest, calm, poised, defiant. They buried her name in scandal, but it rose, immortal. Her secret? She never wanted to be remembered as a lover. She wanted to be remembered as a ruler. And now, she is. He was born into power and swallowed by paranoia. Ivan IV, known to history as Ivan the Terrible, wasn't always terrible. As a child, he watched nobles poison each other for influence. His innocence died early. But when he became the first Tsar of all Russia, something inside him cracked. He envisioned greatness, unity, order, glory. He built cathedrals, centralized power, created the first Russian secret police. But beneath the crown was a man at war with his own mind. He trusted no one, not even his closest advisors, not even his own son. One night, in a fit of rage, Ivan struck that son, his heir. The blow was fatal. He collapsed, screaming, holding the boy's broken body. Russia held its breath. From that moment, Ivan ruled with fury and fear. He drowned cities in blood, tortured thousands, and yet, through chaos, he forged a nation. Was he a monster or a mirror of a world that fed on cruelty? You see, Ivan didn't just change history, he stained it. And his greatest secret? He may have hated himself more than anyone else ever could. She claimed to hear voices, not whispers from men, but echoes from heaven. A teenage girl, illiterate and barefoot, walked into the court of kings and demanded an army. Joan of Arc, the Maid of Orleans, turned the tide of a war that had dragged for 100 years. With fire in her eyes and steel in her words, she led soldiers, grown men, into battle, and they followed her. Not because she was powerful, but because she made them believe they could win. Yet power breeds fear. The same voices that crowned a king became evidence in a trial of heresy. They stripped her, mocked her, chained her. At 19, they burned her alive. But here's what they couldn't destroy: her legend. Joan didn't just fight an enemy. She fought the idea that only kings mattered. She rewrote what a hero could be. And the secret they buried with her ashes? She was never fighting for herself. She fought because something divine whispered she must. He was the voice in the radio when all hope seemed lost. Winston Churchill didn't just speak to a nation, he lit a fire beneath its feet. As bombs rained over London, he promised not surrender, but resistance. Cigars in hand, whiskey on breath, he wrote speeches that outlasted armies. But behind the thunder was a storm inside. Churchill suffered from what he called the Black Dog: depression, isolation, shadows that no bomb could match. He drank too much. He insulted too many. He failed again and again. And yet, when history demanded a lion, he roared. He didn't win because he was perfect. He won because he never stopped getting back up. Churchill's secret? The world saw a leader, but he saw himself as a man one step away from collapse. And maybe that's why he stood so tall. They locked him away for 27 years, and when the door finally opened, he stepped into the sunlight without rage. Nelson Mandela was born in chains, not iron, but injustice. He became a symbol, a threat, a myth, and in prison they tried to break him, but he turned a concrete cell into a school, a temple, a revolution in silence. When apartheid fell, the world expected revenge. He offered peace, not because he forgot the pain, but because he remembered it too well. He became president, but more than that, he became a possibility. The truth? Mandela wasn't perfect. He compromised. He forgave men who didn't deserve it. His secret? He believed the only way to truly defeat a system was to stay human, even when it tried to make you a monster. She danced with fire in her eyes and died with a blindfold over them. Mata Hari, seductress, performer, legend. She captivated generals, crossed borders. But behind the jewels and silks was a woman trying to survive in a man's war. They called her a spy, a traitor. But did she ever hold secrets? Or was she simply too visible to be allowed to live? Her trial was a theater. Her sentence already decided. She blew a kiss to her executioners, and as the rifles fired, history froze. Mata Hari's secret? She wasn't a master of deception. She was a mirror, reflecting the fears of a world that couldn't control her. And sometimes, mystery is more dangerous than truth. He looked like a poet, but carried a gun like a storm. Che Guevara, the doctor turned revolutionary, became the face of rebellion. From jungles to mountains, he whispered one word: justice, and millions answered. He wrote manifestos in candlelight. He shot traitors at dawn, to some a hero, to others a butcher. But no one ignored him. Che believed real revolution was sacrifice: blood, sweat, and flame. He gave all three. And when the CIA caught him in Bolivia, he faced them with eyes unblinking. "I know you've come to kill me," he said. "Shoot. I am only a man." His secret? He didn't fear death. He feared dying forgotten. And in that, he succeeded. History remembers the brave, but rarely speaks of what they sacrificed. Sometimes their silence was the loudest act of courage. If one story here changed how you see the world, maybe there are others waiting to be uncovered. And when the next story calls, will you be watching? Until then, keep your mind open. You've heard their names, but do you know the truth behind the legend? Each one of them carried a secret, a battle, a sacrifice that the world forgot. Today, we bring them back to life, not as heroes, but as humans, haunted, brilliant, flawed. This is their real story, and once you hear it, you'll never forget them again. Albert Einstein. They called him a genius. But behind those wild eyes was a silent child who didn't speak until he was 4. They thought he was broken, slow. Yet inside, time twisted, stars danced, and light bent in ways no one had dared to imagine. Einstein shattered the universe with just a pencil and his mind. E equals mc squared wasn't a formula. It was a whisper from the edge of reality. But it cursed him. The atom bomb, born from his theories, left him devastated. He begged the world, don't use it. And when he died, they cut out his brain to hold a piece of the divine. But Albert Einstein's true brilliance, it wasn't in what he proved. It was in what he questioned forever. Socrates never wrote a single word. No scrolls, no manifestos, just questions. He wandered barefoot through Athens, asking things that made powerful men sweat. What is truth? Who are you without your mask? They called him a corrupter, a danger to youth. But Socrates wasn't trying to destroy. He was trying to awaken. He chose death over silence. He drank poison with steady hands, eyes burning like stars. And as the world darkened, he whispered to his followers, "The unexamined life is not worth living." And then he was gone. But his voice never left us, because Socrates planted a fire in our minds and dared us to look inward. Leonardo da Vinci didn't belong to his time. He lived in the 15th century, but dreamed in the 30th. He sketched flying machines while men still feared the sky. He dissected corpses in candlelight, mapping the secrets of the human body. He painted souls onto canvas, and in his notebooks, written backward to protect the ideas, were glimpses of a world yet to be born. Leonardo da Vinci was a scientist, an artist, a mystic, but he died alone, whispering apologies to the future. So much I wanted to know. We call him a genius. But the truth? He was just a man, desperate to understand everything. Julius Caesar was not just a man. He was a storm in human form. He crossed the Rubicon when no one dared, and made the Republic tremble. People loved him, feared him. He gave Rome bread and power and spectacle, and in return, his friends carved their knives into his back. Et tu, brute? That whisper shattered an empire. But Caesar's legacy didn't die on the Senate floor. It rose in the fire, in emperors, in centuries of conquest. Julius Caesar changed the meaning of ambition. He showed the world. You can rule, but only if you're willing to be betrayed. Galileo Galilei saw the stars and refused to look away. He built telescopes with trembling hands and peered into forever. He saw moons dancing around Jupiter. He whispered, "The earth moves." But the church called him a liar. They forced him to kneel, to deny what he saw. Galileo obeyed, but as he rose, he muttered, "And yet it moves." He died in silence, blinded, forgotten. But the stars he saw still shine, because Galileo Galilei didn't just discover the cosmos, he discovered the price of truth. Genghis Khan was born in blood. His father was poisoned, his family exiled. He had nothing, no crown, no army, only rage. But Genghis Khan turned that rage into fire. He united the Mongol tribes, forged an empire larger than Rome. Cities fell before him. Legends say 1 in 200 men alive today carry his blood. But behind the sword was a lawgiver, a strategist, a visionary. He banned torture, built roads, respected religions. Genghis Khan was no monster. He was a paradox, the storm that built as it destroyed. Martin Luther King had a dream, but first he had nightmares, threats, bombs, hate in the streets, and yet he walked. He stood before thousands and said, "I have a dream," and the world trembled. Martin Luther King Jr. wasn't just a speaker, he was a force. He knew he wouldn't grow old. The night before he died, he said, "I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you." And then, a gunshot. Silence. but his dream still marching. Marie Curie glowed, literally. The first woman to win a Nobel Prize, then the second. She unlocked the secrets of radiation, touching stars hidden inside stone. But it poisoned her. Her bones, her journals, still radiate. She carried vials in her pocket. No gloves, no fear. Marie Curie didn't seek fame. She sought understanding, and paid for it with her body. But she gave us hope. She lit the dark and proved a woman can change the world, even if it breaks her. Christopher Columbus chased a ghost. He believed the world curved just enough to carry him to gold and glory. Instead, he found something no map had shown. New lands, new people. He brought kingdoms crashing into each other. We call it discovery. Others call it invasion. Christopher Columbus never knew where he had truly landed. He died broke, forgotten. But his voyage rewrote the planet. Lines on maps shifted, empires rose, and history. It remembered him, not for who he was, but for the world he changed. Sun Tzu may never have existed, but the art of war survived fire, flood, empire, collapse. A scroll that whispered, "All warfare is deception." He wrote not for kings, but for the mind. Businessmen quote him. Generals fear him. But the real genius of Sun Tzu, he taught us that battles aren't won with strength, but with silence, with patience, with knowing your enemy and yourself. Even today, his words move armies, because Sun Tzu didn't teach war. He taught how to win without it. They changed the world, but at what cost? Each of them left behind a piece of themselves to remind us of what matters. Their lives are gone, but their echoes remain. Somewhere inside you, a fire has lit, and maybe it's time for your story to begin. Because the world doesn't need more heroes. It needs your truth. What story will they tell about you? They were born in different eras, spoke different languages, prayed to different gods, fought for different reasons, but their stories still echo through the bones of time. They changed the world, and their legacy breathes in every breath we take. This is not just history. This is memory. This is prophecy, a journey through time, through minds that shaped it, through souls that refused to be forgotten. Discover the legends that defined history. They called him a prodigy, but no, Mozart was something deeper, something impossible. At 5, he composed symphonies. At 12, operas. At 20, he could move a room of aristocrats to tears and smiles with a flick of his wrist. But genius is a double-edged violin. Behind his laughter hid poverty, rejection, loneliness. He died young, unknown, buried in a pauper's grave. Yet his melodies outlived empires, his notes stitched into our dreams. Listen closely. Do you hear it? That spark of creation echoing from centuries past? That is Mozart, still playing inside you. He was just 20 when he began. But within a decade, the world knelt before him. Alexander the Great, not just a warrior, but a storm in human form. He crossed deserts where armies died of thirst, scaled mountains no man dared, and gazed into the eyes of kings before taking their crowns. His mind, a chessboard of blood and brilliance. But what haunted him wasn't conquest, it was purpose. He wept, they say, when no worlds were left to conquer. And still, somewhere, his ghost marches, through ruins, through legends, through us. What would you do if no one could stop you? He was a prince, cloaked in silk, surrounded by gold, sheltered from pain. But then he saw suffering, and something inside shattered. He walked away from it all. Palace, title, comfort, into the forest, into silence. For years he sat beneath a tree, battling demons not outside, but within. And then stillness, enlightenment. They called him Buddha, the awakened one. He didn't preach commandments, he invited you to wake up. Even now, his whisper lives in the pause between your thoughts. You are not your fear. You are the sky, and the storm will pass. He was a runaway printer's apprentice who lit the world with ideas. Franklin wasn't just a founding father, he was a time traveler of the mind. He tamed lightning, created libraries, mapped the Gulf Stream, and still had time to invent the rocking chair. His secret? Curiosity, weaponized. But behind the witticisms was a man who sacrificed comfort for legacy, who stared down empires with a wink and a feathered quill. And when others debated history, he wrote it. If knowledge is power, Franklin was electricity. What's sparking inside you right now? He never led an army, never wore a crown. Yet his words split time itself. B.C. and A.D. born in a manger, killed like a criminal, worshipped like a god. He spoke in parables, healed with a touch and forgave with his final breath. Betrayed by friends, crucified by fear, and yet the tomb did not keep him. His story is not one of death, but transformation. Light from darkness, hope from suffering. And whether you believe or not, his name still echoes in prayers, in pain, in possibility. They called her mad. But madness is often a mirror, reflecting truths too sharp for the world. Juana, queen by blood, prisoner by fear. She loved fiercely, too fiercely, they said, clinging to her dead husband's body for days, refusing to let go. Her passion was her crime, her grief, her cage. They locked her in stone walls for decades, but inside, a fire never faded. A queen whispered to shadows, still dreaming of love. Was she insane, or simply too human for her time? He was a dragon in motion. Every punch a poem, every kick a philosophy. Bruce Lee didn't just fight. He redefined what it meant to be alive in your body. Born between cultures, he shattered stereotypes with his fists and mind. He spoke about water, how it flows, adapts, becomes anything. Behind the lightning speed was a thinker, a lover, a rebel. He died young, but not before leaving an earthquake in our culture. His voice still roars in gyms, in movies, in mirrors. "Be water," he said. She danced like fire, spoke like smoke, and in the shadows of war, Mata Hari became a myth. Spy, seductress, scapegoat, no one really knew. She performed in silks by night, passed secrets by day. But was she guilty, or just a woman too dangerous to be free? They executed her at dawn. She didn't flinch, blew a kiss to her firing squad. Legends aren't always saints. Some are masks we'll never lift. And in the whispers of history, she still dances, daring us to see past the illusion. By candlelight, she walked the halls of war, not with weapons, but with purpose. Florence, the lady with the lamp. She rewrote what it meant to care, to heal, to fight without blood. Her hands cleaned filth. Her voice challenged empires. When others saw dying men, she saw systems broken. Her statistics saved more than soldiers. Her light, mathematical, maternal, magnificent, still burns in every hospital. She didn't seek glory. She sought change, and got it. Quietly, relentlessly. He stared into the abyss and taught it to speak. Nietzsche, the philosopher of fire and ice. He wrote of gods dying, of men rising, of truths too sharp to touch. He was mocked, feared, worshipped, sometimes all at once. Alone, ill, misunderstood, yet his words carved cracks in the walls of thought. He who has a why can bear almost any how. He bled ideas onto paper until madness took him. Or maybe he simply saw too clearly. His thoughts still haunt classrooms, lyrics, revolutions. What is your why? Their journeys ended, but their footsteps still leave imprints on the earth. The fire they lit, still burning, in hospitals, in classrooms, in every whispered question and every shouted revolution. History remembers, but it does not repeat. It evolves through us. So now, the question is no longer about them. It's about you. In the shadows of history, 10 souls await, each a beacon of power, mystery, and legacy. From the sands of Egypt to the halls of science, from the battlefield to the prison cell, their stories intertwine, shaping our world. Prepare to journey through time. Witness the echoes of greatness. This is not just history, it's a legacy reborn. Welcome to the Saga of Legends. Marquis de Sade, a name whispered like a forbidden spell. Born into nobility, he had everything, yet desired the one thing society feared most: absolute freedom of the human mind and body. In the dungeons of his desires, he wrote with blood and ink, unraveling the darkest chambers of human lust, pain, and power. He was imprisoned, exiled, condemned, not just by kings and courts, but by time itself. But was he truly a monster, or simply a mirror? His words, banned and burned, refused to die. They returned, more alive than ever, igniting debates, fantasies, and fears. The term sadism was born from his legacy, a shadow clinging to civilization's polished surface. And as you hear his name, you feel it. The chill, the pull, the fascination. Because deep down, a voice asks, what if Sade didn't corrupt us, but revealed us? Tutankhamun, the boy king. Dead at 19, yet more alive today than in his own time. His reign was brief, his power limited, or so we thought. Until 1922, when a single step into his tomb awakened a storm of mystery. The world froze, gold shimmered in torchlight, and the myth of the cursed pharaoh was born. Scientists collapsed, explorers vanished. Whispers of a vengeance from beyond the grave echoed in museum halls. But beyond the thrill of the curse was a child, hidden in layers of ritual, loneliness, and eternal expectations. He was a puppet of priests, a god among mortals, a prisoner of divinity. And yet, his silence shook the world. Even now, his gaze pierces time. You wonder, is he watching you? And, more importantly, why? Isaac Newton. The name feels heavy, as if the earth itself bends toward it. The man who saw the invisible, who translated the universe into law. But behind the formulas was a ghost, solitary, obsessed, haunted by visions of apocalypse and alchemy. While others slept, Newton stared into candlelight, decoding secrets from ancient scrolls and falling apples. He believed he was chosen, by God, by fate, to reveal the machinery of the cosmos, and he did. Motion, gravity, light, but he paid a price. Isolation, madness, a brain forever spinning faster than the world it measured. Was he a genius or a prophet? He gave us science, yes, but also a strange whisper. The deeper you look into reality, the less real it becomes. And in that whisper, Newton still speaks. Nelson Mandela, the prisoner who became a president, the man whose silence thundered louder than guns. For 27 years he sat in a cell no wider than a grave, breaking rocks, but not his spirit. They called him a terrorist. Then they called him a savior. But what never changed was his unshakable belief that love is stronger than fear and forgiveness deeper than pain. When he walked free, the world held its breath. He didn't seek revenge. He offered a hand to the very people who locked him away. That's not just strength, that's transcendence. His eyes had seen the worst, yet chose hope. He turned a broken country into a miracle of unity. And as his voice echoed across continents, a question remains. Could you have forgiven the way he did? Vlad the Impaler. The name drips with dread. A prince, a warrior, a monster, depending on who tells the tale. To some, he was a demon who drank blood. To others, a national hero who bled so his people wouldn't. He impaled thousands, forests of bodies, twitching in agony. But behind the horror was a purpose, to terrify enemies into retreat. It worked. The Ottomans trembled. Even their horses refused to cross his lands. And yet, the man vanished without a trace. No body, no grave. Just stories, whispers, and a legend that would birth Dracula himself. When the moon is full and the night grows cold, ask yourself, was he a villain, or simply what the world needed to fear? Napoleon III. He lived in the shadow of an emperor and tried to become one. Exiled, forgotten, then returned. Not as a general, but as a president. Then an emperor again. He ruled with dreams of greatness, but history had other plans. His vision reshaped Paris, made France shine, until war shattered everything. Defeat, captivity, exile, again. But this time, there was no comeback. He was haunted by legacy, obsessed with destiny, and forever compared to a ghost wearing his uncle's hat. He wasn't Napoleon the Great. He was Napoleon the Lost. And maybe that's what makes him human. Not the glory, but the failure, the struggle, the mirror we all fear to look into. Muhammad Ali. He floated like a butterfly, stung like a bee, and roared like a god. He wasn't just the greatest boxer. He was a force, unstoppable, magnetic, divine. He changed his name, refused to fight in Vietnam, faced prison, faced hatred, and still he never flinched. "I am the greatest," he said, and the world believed him, because he made them. But behind the bravado was a poet, a rebel, a man fighting not just opponents in the ring, but the system outside it. Parkinson's slowed his body, but never his soul. He lit the Olympic flame with shaking hands and lit hearts with eternal fire. Ali didn't just win fights, he won minds. He became a legend, because legends, like him, never fall. They rise. Thomas Edison, the wizard of Menlo Park, the man who turned darkness into light, literally. Over 1,000 inventions, 1,000 failures, but he never stopped. His lab burned down. He smiled. "Now we can start fresh," he said. That was Edison. Part inventor, part showman, part myth. He gave us the light bulb, the phonograph, even motion pictures. But in the shadows, controversy. Accused of stealing, battling Tesla in the war of currents. Was he a genius, a thief, or simply a man who refused to sleep while the world was dark? Either way, when you flip a switch tonight, remember, that light may carry echoes of his madness and his brilliance. Fidel Castro. With a cigar in one hand and revolution in the other, he defied an empire. A law student turned warrior, a man who lived in the jungle, whispered through radios, and toppled a dictator. But once in power, the dream twisted. Education soared, but so did fear. Freedom shrank. Enemies vanished. He outlived presidents, survived assassins, and turned a tiny island into the eye of a Cold War hurricane. Was he a liberator? A tyrant? Maybe both. Maybe neither. What's certain is this: the world couldn't look away. Even now, when you hear his name, you feel the smoke, the fire, and the tension of a man who reshaped the map through sheer will. William Wallace, a name carved in freedom, a man of myth and flesh who stood when others knelt. Scotland was bleeding under foreign chains, but Wallace, he roared, not with speeches, but with swords. He was a farmer, a rebel, a ghost in the mist. The English called him a savage. The Scots called him hope. He fought not for a crown, but for a voice. And when they captured him, tortured him, tore him apart, he didn't break. His final word, freedom, shook empires. Today, his face is legend. His cry echoes in every soul longing to be free. Wallace didn't live long, but he lived loud. And that echo, it never dies. Their footsteps fade, but their impact remains. As the pages turn, new stories await. Will you be the next to shape history? The torch is passed, the journey continues. Embrace the legacy, become the legend. Your story is waiting to be told. Join the ranks of the timeless. Let your voice echo through eternity. The saga continues with you. This is where history listens back. They changed the world through sound, silence, strength, and code. From ancient battlefields to quiet acts of defiance. Their names echo across time, not because they sought fame, but because they acted when it mattered. A composer who defied silence, a general who became a president, an inventor who dreamed in lightning, a woman who sat and stood for millions, a coder who whispered in the language of machines, and more. Behind every name, a revolution. He lit the world, but died alone in the dark. Nikola Tesla saw the future before it existed. He dreamed in electric storms, visions of wireless power, energy that danced invisibly through the air, a mind unshackled, unbent. But genius has a price. He was ridiculed, robbed, and forgotten. Thomas Edison took the spotlight. Tesla took the silence. In a New York hotel room surrounded by pigeons, he whispered his last thoughts to the walls. No medals, no riches, just a heart still humming with voltage. But not all revolutions are born in labs. Sometimes it starts on a bus seat with a woman who refused to stand. He heard silence, yet composed eternity. As a child, Ludwig van Beethoven was beaten by his father to force greatness from him. Music was not joy, it was survival. By 26, his hearing began to fade. Imagine that. Your soul speaks in sound, but your body stops listening. He could no longer hear the notes, but he could feel them, through vibrations in the floor, in the air, in his bones. The Ninth Symphony, composed in total deafness, roared not from his ears, but from something deeper, something unbreakable. You can almost see him now, conducting a symphony he could not hear, yet knew by heart. A man at war with silence, and winning. But history doesn't pause on one man's victory. Far away, across an ocean, another war was brewing. A war that would give birth not just to a nation, but to a legend. He didn't want power. That's why he was trusted with it. George Washington stood in the snow, watching blood freeze on the boots of starving soldiers. The revolution wasn't glorious. It was brutal, cold, and uncertain. Yet, through betrayal, despair, and near defeat, he held his army and his soul together. When victory came, the people offered him a crown. He refused, twice. He walked away from power, not because he feared it, but because he respected it. That choice echoed through centuries, shaping democracy itself. And yet, while empires formed and liberty expanded, in the shadows of freedom, injustice festered. One man dreamed of lighting up the future, literally, and his mind, it sparkled like lightning. One seat, one refusal, one moment that cracked a system. Rosa Parks was tired, not just in her body, but in her soul. On December 1st, 1955, she sat where she wasn't allowed and didn't move. That silence, it screamed. It roared across America like thunder rolling from a quiet sky. She wasn't loud, she didn't shout, but her stillness made the ground shake. Arrested, humiliated, yes, but defeated? Never. That moment on the bus was a spark, and from it rose the fire of a movement. But revolutions aren't only fought on streets. Sometimes they're written in lines of code, whispered into machines. And one woman didn't just write that code, she taught the world a new language. She didn't break the system, she reprogrammed it. Grace Hopper stared at a wall of wires, punched cards, and silence, and saw language. Not the language of poets, but of machines. She created the first compiler. She made computers speak. While the world saw cold circuits, she saw rhythm, flow, and infinite potential. They called her Amazing Grace, and she earned it, not through miracles, but through logic, precision, and rebellion against "we've always done it this way." When men said, "computers are for men," she answered with brilliance. But code and commands weren't the first forms of resistance. Before her, there was a rebel who didn't write his destiny. He screamed it, with chains still on. He was born in chains. He died in legend. Spartacus didn't want war. He wanted freedom. But Rome gave him blood, lashes, and slavery. So he rose. Not as a conqueror, but as a man who'd tasted injustice too deeply. With gladiators by his side, he turned the empire's arenas into battlegrounds. They called it a rebellion. He called it a beginning. For 2 years, he shattered legions, stormed cities, and dared to challenge the gods of power. In the end, he was crucified, but not forgotten, because true rulers aren't crowned. They rise even when kingdoms fall, and one would soon rise, not by sword, but by legacy. He united a shattered world with sword and schoolbooks. Charlemagne was not born a legend. He built himself brick by brick. As Europe splintered into chaos, he forged an empire not only through war, but through wisdom. He read by candlelight, ruled with pen and blade alike. He crowned himself Holy Roman Emperor, but more than lands, he conquered ignorance. He revived education, language, and law, planting seeds that would become cathedrals and universities. Where others burned, he built. Where others silenced, he taught. His empire crumbled, but his vision endured. Yet even visionaries bow to something greater. Sometimes true strength lies not in conquest, but in surrender. He began as a butcher. He became a beacon. Ashoka spilled rivers of blood to claim his throne. His empire stretched farther than any before him, but the screams haunted him. After one battle, as he stood among corpses, he felt nothing but shame. That was the moment everything changed. He renounced violence, embraced Buddhism, and dedicated his reign to compassion. Roads, hospitals, peace treaties. His legacy was kindness. He carved his laws in stone pillars across India, so no one would forget. Power means nothing without purpose. And yet, centuries later, one man would pick up that message again. Not on thrones, but on stages, with words as sharp as any blade. He escaped his chains, but never stopped running toward justice. Frederick Douglass was born a slave. He taught himself to read in secret, whispering letters into the dark. Books became weapons. Words became armor. He escaped, but never turned his back. He spoke like fire. his voice shaking halls, echoing through power. Presidents listened, crowds wept. He faced mobs, threats, betrayal, but he never blinked. He wrote his name into history, not with blood, but with ink. And still, his fight was not for himself. He believed a better world could be written, and one man would take up that pen, not in speeches, but in stories. He wrote empires, then walked away from them. Leo Tolstoy didn't just tell stories, he exposed souls. In War and Peace, he made time itself bend to language. In Anna Karenina, he opened a vein into the heart of love and ruin. He was adored, quoted, followed, but inside he wrestled demons, wealth, fame, hypocrisy. So he gave it up. At 82, barefoot and trembling, he fled his estate in search of truth. He died in a train station, cold, unknown, free. His final chapter wasn't written in ink, but in silence. And now, the story is yours to write. 10 names echoed through history. But who will echo next? Sometimes greatness sits beside you. Sometimes it stares back in the mirror. These lives remind us that greatness isn't born. It's chosen, in moments when no one is watching, in silence, in storm, in stubborn hope, and maybe, just maybe, there's a name history hasn't written yet, a name still waiting to echo across time, to rise in resistance, creation, or courage, to write, to lead, to defy, to become more than a name. That name could be yours. They never met each other. Different centuries, different worlds. But they all asked the same question. What makes us human? One dreamed of freedom under the stars. Another decoded the language of life. Some listened to the silence of the body. Others to the music of the soul. One man split the sea. Another split the atom of meaning. They whispered through time, and we listened. They didn't speak loudly, but the world still echoes with their voices. Every one of them carried a torch, lighting the way through darkness. The path they walked, it was not for them alone. It's now your turn to walk it. He didn't chase fame. He chased order. Johann Sebastian Bach composed not just melodies, but blueprints for divine architecture. His music was mathematics wrapped in majesty. He built cathedrals with sound and prayed with every key. In his world, every sorrow had a resolution, every silence a purpose. He taught us that time could be translated into feeling, that God could be heard. His fingers danced while his soul whispered. And in every fugue, we hear not just genius, but grace. He never saw himself as special. But centuries later, the world still leans in and listens. He boarded a ship to chart coastlines, and instead rewrote the meaning of creation. Charles Darwin didn't speak in fire or thunder. He watched, he questioned, he followed finches and fossils, and found the thread connecting every living being. In silence, he heard the roar of evolution. His ideas were met with fury by those afraid that truth might shake the heavens. But Darwin didn't chase conflict. He offered wonder, the kind that makes you whisper, "What else don't we know?" And in that question stood a man with eyes like equations and dreams forged in Russian frost. A man who saw the universe as a pattern, waiting to be solved. He saw the universe in his sleep, literally. The periodic table whispered to him in a dream, and when he awoke, he wrote order into chaos. Mendeleev wasn't just a chemist. He was a prophet of pattern. He predicted elements that hadn't been discovered, yet, as if he heard nature humming before the rest of us tuned in. They laughed, at first, but time proved him right, again and again. His gift wasn't just logic, it was intuition carved in fire. But beyond atoms and bonds was a question larger than matter. What holds the stars together when the body fails? That's when another voice entered, one powered by a machine and a mind that touched the edge of time. He lost his voice, but gained the universe. Stephen Hawking defied gravity not just in theory, but in existence. Diagnosed to fade within 2 years, he burned for decades, bright as any star. Trapped in a body that betrayed him, his mind danced through black holes, paradoxes, and infinite possibility. He made the cosmos human again, asking us not to fear its void, but to explore its echo. Every synthesized word became sacred, every blink a theorem. He made us believe that even silence could contain entire galaxies. But what if, before stars, before atoms, it all began with breath, the breath of healing, of balance, the wisdom of listening, not to space but to the body. He touched the forehead of the sick, not as a ritual, but as a revelation. Hippocrates whispered to the body and heard answers. Before science had names, he had instincts. He believed that nature heals, and doctors simply listen. That health was harmony, and sickness a disruption in the song. His hands wrote oaths that still bind healers today, but his voice was soft. The world changed louder. In the East, another mind awakened, one that didn't dissect the body, but studied the soul of society. He didn't heal sickness. He healed culture, with silence, with structure, with 5 eternal virtues. He didn't rule empires. He refined them. Confucius walked through kingdoms on foot, teaching that peace isn't power, but posture. That honor lives in the daily choices, not grand declarations. He believed the heart and state mirrored each other. He didn't command, he questioned. Not with force, but with quiet certainty. His words outlived empires. But his greatest lesson? That meaning is found not in isolation, but in connection. The way a river joins the sea, or the way one man would later part it. A man who heard divinity not in temples, but from fire on a mountain. He was not born free, yet led millions into freedom. Moses was a man of stuttered speech and unstoppable will. He turned a shepherd's staff into a symbol of liberation. He questioned authority, split seas, and climbed into the storm. He wasn't perfect, and that's what made him powerful. He doubted, broke, forgave. He gave laws not just of punishment, but of identity. He reminded a lost people that they were chosen, that wandering wasn't failure, but formation. His fire came from within. But when his voice faded, another arose, not to lead tribes, but minds. With quill and mask, he shaped the soul of language. He never ruled, but he ruled hearts. William Shakespeare turned ink into emotion. He showed us that love could be poison, that laughter hides daggers, that even a fool can speak truth. He wrote kings but gave the power to jesters. He painted all humanity on a single stage and invited us to see ourselves. His genius wasn't in what he knew, but how he made us feel. Time, death, envy, wonder. He bent them all into verse. But when the curtain falls, who remains? Only shadows, ideas. And in those shadows, another mind stirred. One who believed that ideas are more real than flesh. He saw the world not as it was, but as it could be. Plato gave us the cave, the philosopher, the form. He believed reality was a veil, and truth a light behind it. He taught that justice wasn't a law, but a rhythm, that the soul could be shaped like a city. He questioned everything, and taught others to do the same. His student changed history. But Plato, he changed the way we define reality. And beneath his logic burned a hunger for harmony. Not in words, in sound, a music not of notes, but of essence. And through that harmony came a man, whose hands made heaven audible. He stood in front of a world teetering between fear and hope. With a voice that trembled not from weakness, but weight, John F. Kennedy asked not what your country could do, but what you could become. He dreamed of the stars while nuclear shadows crawled across the earth. He smiled in the face of pressure, and in that smile, a generation found courage. His life was a balance of charm and ticking clocks, and in one irreversible second, he was gone. A single bullet, and yet the echo still moves hearts. But courage never dies. It multiplies. The moment he left the stage, another man opened a door to a deeper mystery. A man who watched the slow dance of life not through politics, but through nature itself. They left no map, only questions, only light. Look around. The world they dreamed of is here, or it could be, but only if you listen, if you look deeper, if you ask not what they did, but why they did it. What if the next chapter isn't written by them, but by you? What if the next answer waits in your silence? What if you're already carrying a piece of their fire? The story continues in the minds that dare to remember, and those who keep the fire alive never truly vanish. The question is, will you carry it forward?